All right, here we go with unboxing less than again. But this time we're going to talk about unpacking what I'm calling the 10,000-hour trap. And if I had a subtitle for this episode, it would be The Holiness of Your Hidden Hours. If you've ever felt like you're living a life that wasn't quite yours or carrying burdens you didn't choose, then you're in the right place. I'm Barbie Wolf, and this is Unboxing Barbie, the podcast for cycle breakers and comrades with our boots in the ground. It's a space for honest conversations about healing, faith, and becoming who we were always meant to be. So let's unpack some things together. I have to be honest with you about what sparked today's conversation. Today, I was listening to a podcast with the artist Amanda Cook as a guest, and I wish I could remember the name. I will try and put it in the show notes if I remember. It's a wonderful conversation. And her art has become a companion to me. She's an artist I deeply admire. And she was talking about the 10,000-hour rule, that demonstrable truth that it takes about 10,000 hours of dedicated practice to achieve true excellence at something. And as I was listening, this thought, this voice just inserted itself into my head and it said, if only you could get your 10,000 hours in somewhere, Barbie. And it was sharp. It was full of resentment for lost time, for paths not taken. And it was dripping with that old familiar feeling of being less than. And I realized in that moment that this is the trap, not the rule itself. The rule is it's true. It's the cultural story we've built around it that creeps in and creates a trap for so many of us. This episode is for all of us who would love to put 10,000 hours into a polished skill, but life has chosen a different route. It's for the under-resourced, the ones without access to childcare, for the comrades with boots on the ground, breaking cycles and doing the hard work that leaves no room for what the world deems non-essential. Today, we're talking about how to find freedom from that trap. The 10,000-hour rule is a powerful metric for skill. 10,000 hours of practicing the violin, and you become a virtuoso. 10,000 hours of coding, and you become an expert developer. The problem isn't the rule. It's the hierarchy of value our culture attaches to it. It creates a ledger that only recognizes certain kinds of work. And if you're like me, you can look at your life and feel like your hours don't fit the accepted columns. Where do you log the 10,000 hours you've poured into child therapy and classes to help kids from hard places heal? There's no place on this earth that's going to recognize that as a degree. Where's the certificate for the thousands of hours spent rocking a sick child, navigating a difficult marriage, or recovering from trauma? The world's ledger has no column for these hours. They are invisible, completely unbillable. And the logic of the trap whispers that because they can't be quantified or credentialed, they are less valuable. But what if we've been looking at the wrong ledger? What if our value was never meant to be measured by our output? This brings me to a vision from the prophet Zechariah. He sees a golden lampstand, a menorah, being fed a constant supply of oil from two olive trees. It produces light without any effort. It doesn't have to strive or work to get its fuel. It just has to stay connected to the source. And the angel gives Zechariah the message of this vision. And it's a message that completely dismantles the 10,000-hour trap. He says, "Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts." The 10,000-hour rule, as our culture uses it, is the definition of might and power. It's about human striving, human discipline, human achievement. But God says that's not the currency of his kingdom. The real work, the work of eternal value anyway, is done by his spirit. Our job isn't to produce the oil. It's to be a lampstand. Our value isn't in what we achieve, it's in our connection to the source. So if our worth isn't based on our might or power, then who are we when we feel caught in the trap of our circumstances? when our hours feel less like a path to excellence and more like a prison cell of the mundane. Zechariah has a name for us. He calls us prisoners of hope. Sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? But in the original Hebrew, and I won't try and say it, the word for hope doesn't mean it's a flimsy wish. He isn't saying, "Oh, I hope you have a great day." It means a confident expectation. It comes from a root word that also means cord or rope. So, a prisoner of hope is someone who is chained not to their present circumstances, but to a future promise. You may feel like you're in the prison of the unseen, the unappreciated, the uncredentialed, but God says your identity is not defined by those walls. Your identity is defined by the rope of His promise that He has thrown down to you. You're tethered to hope. When we see our lives through this lens, that it's not by might and that we are prisoners of hope, it changes what our 10,000 hours are actually for. The world's 10,000 hours are about polishing a skill. But the hours the world ignores, those are the hours that forge a soul. Those hours in the prison of the mundane are actually a refining fire. Zechariah talks about God's people being refined like silver and tested like gold. The fire is painful, but its purpose isn't to destroy. It's to burn away the impurities so that what's left is pure, strong, and reflects the image of the one who's doing the refining. This makes me think of someone you might not expect, and it's Lucille Ball and her character on I Love Lucy. Think about it. Her husband, Ricky, was the polished professional. He was the band leader, the singer. He had his 10,000 hours on stage under the lights. And what was the plot of almost every episode? It was Lucy desperately trying to get into the show. She was constantly scheming to get her 10,000 hours in the spotlight to prove she had a skill the world would applaud. But here's the thing we all know. Looking back, we don't love Lucy for her singing voice or perfect dancing. We love her for her hilarious, messy, unstoppable humanity. We love her for her resilience, her creativity, her refusal to give up. Her 10,000 hours weren't spent becoming a great performer. They were spent becoming Lucy. Her character was forged in the fire of those schemes, and that's what made her iconic. And that's the point. The audience world was watching Lucy, judging her performance. But what was truly being created was her unforgettable character. 10,000 hours of therapeutic parenting doesn't get you a degree, but it forges you into an expert in unconditional love. The 10,000 hours of battling anxiety doesn't earn you a PhD, but it forges you into a vessel of profound resilience. And this brings us to God's ultimate vision for this new economy of faith. And I know I've already talked about Zechariah, but for those of you who read the Bible, you'll already know this. And for those who don't, I want to invite you into this ancient vision because I think it's the source code for a whole new way of seeing our worth. And it comes from the prophet Zechariah. In the ancient world of the Bible, holiness was all about separation. There was a strict hierarchy. You had the temple and then the holy place within the temple and then the most holy place. You had people and then you had the priests, and then at the absolute pinnacle, you had the high priest. He was the ultimate spiritual insider, and on the front of his turban, he wore a solid gold plate engraved with the words, "Holy unto the Lord," or "Holy to the Lord." It was the ultimate status symbol of sacredness. But then Zechariah paints this picture of God's dream for the world. And he says that in this new world, that same phrase, "Holy unto the Lord," will be written on the most unlikely of objects, the little bells on the harnesses of war horses. I have to pause there. He takes the label from the absolute top of the spiritual pyramid, the high priest's golden crown, and he puts it on the bottom, on a noisy, mundane, and even profane object associated with the grit and violence of the world, of war. So what Zechariah is showing me, or us maybe, is God's great project of dynamiting the entire human system of less than and greater than. He's erasing the line between the sacred and the secular. He's leveling the playing field of what matters. And this is the context behind the horse bells. It's a radical declaration that God's holiness is not confined to a special building or a special person. It's available to everyone in every part of life. So when we bring this all together, do you see it? God's accounting system doesn't differentiate between 10,000 hours in a concert hall and 10,000 hours in a kitchen at 3 a.m. with a teething child. The resentment I felt, that voice saying, if only, was the voice of the world's ledger. It was demanding proof of my worth. But God's ledger doesn't require proof. It sees the process. It honors the forging. So I want to ask you today, what are your 10,000 hours? I invite you to take a moment and honor them. The hours of quiet service, the hours of unseen struggle, the hours of faithful presence, the hours that didn't make the resume but did make you. The world will always ask, what do you have to show for your 10,000 hours? God asks a different question. It might be, who have you become in your 10,000 hours? Your life is not a resume of skills to be judged. It is a tapestry of hours to be offered. And every single thread, every hidden and seemingly insignificant hour is already holy to the Lord. And that's where we'll leave it for today. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for sharing this space with me. I love you for being on this journey. Now go, be gentle with yourself this week, and carry on, comrade.